Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me, as always, are my lovely, reliable co-hosts, Daniel Jones and Jeremy Brown. How are you doing today, fellas?
I'm doing well, Jack. Thank you.
I'm sick.
Well, I'm sick of you, so it fits. And this week we are going to be talking about Dishonored, developed by Arkane Studios, published by Bethesda Softworks, which people might recognize for being in the news for various things, both related to their review policies and to their games that they have been publishing and what their other branch has been developing. So
I just would like to make it clear that we did not receive review copies of this game in advance.
Yes, they didn't know about our podcast, when it was released 4 years ago. So, I mean, really, it's their own fault. But
it is.
But Dishonored came out in the year 2012. Barack Obama had just been elected president of the United States.
What?
Again?
No,
Again.
It was before that.
Was it? I thought it came out in 2012.
It did, but it wasn't in November. It was October.
Correct.
Really?
Boy, Jack, I'm just putting you in your place today.
You are. Sorry, I didn't have the date. I was just thinking of the year 2012.
Yeah, but it was probably after the whole hidden tape thing with Romney, so I'm pretty sure that people knew he was going to be president again.
Well, I think that you're right, but I don't know that we can really count on anything anymore.
No. Well,
except
at
for
that
the
time, it was a more
cyanide in our
innocent
glasses.
time, wasn't it?
What's that?
Huh?
It was a more innocent time when things like that actually affected a presidential campaign.
Yeah. Certainly wasn't 2016.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Speaking of highly charged political environments, let's talk about Dishonored.
Okay.
Sure.
Came out in 2012, 4 years ago. 4 years before its sequel came out. Weird. Came out for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And I might be getting this wrong. I think it came out a little bit later for PC. Again, might be wrong about that.
Yeah, it was on Windows. I don't know if it was day and date, same as console.
And last year, it also got a remaster. We're speaking to you from the year 2016. So, yeah, it's an action-oriented stealth game about assassinating, or, well, no, it is about assassinating, even if you take the non-violent route, which is still pretty violent. What do you guys think?
I guess we should describe what Dishonored was going for.
Okay.
Like what? Because the thing about Dishonored is that it's in a lineage of games that traces back to, like, what would you say, Ultima Underworld, and then Deus Ex.
I was going to say
Thief.
Deus Ex, yes.
Yeah,
And-
I think most people would probably point to Thief, but I mean, there were definitely predecessors to that too.
Yeah. It's one of those games that tries very, very hard to give the player many ways to tackle every situation. It's primarily, a stealthy game because you have a ton of stealthy options, but you also have a lot of offensive options as well and I think that's one of the things that I really like about it and appreciate about it in that field of games, because to me it's one of the few in that whole group that you can actually play it as an action game and still have a good time. So that was one of the reasons I really liked it.
Yeah, I think it does give you a lot of different ways to play. I think I guess if we're going to be talking about that right off the bat,
yeah, why not?
I think that's also one of its greatest. One of the things I disliked the most about Dishonored is the fact that it has the non-violent approach, and the game takes different paths depending on whether or not you are just rampantly murdering everyone that crosses your path, or if you're, trying to be kind of a little bit more peaceful and ethical about your assassinations and are just putting people to sleep or knocking them out.
Or giving them the mark, the heretic mark or whatever it was.
Yeah. And so there are basically like only 2 powers and like maybe 1 or 2 devices that you can use throughout the entire game that help you non-lethally, I guess that's a better way, non-lethally take out opponents. And they're just not nearly as interesting as any of the other powers you get. Like, no, everything that's interesting in Dishonored is oriented around murdering the crap out of people. And they're really fun.
I would agree with that.
And so maybe part of my built-in resentment towards Dishonored is the fact that whenever I play stealth games, I like taking the less lethal route. Like, when I play Metal Gear Solid games, I always go for, the tranquilizer pistol and just try and get through the entire game with that stuff. But the thing with Metal Gear Solid is that it's much more oriented around stealth. And I don't think that Dishonored really is. It's more of an action stealth game, if that makes sense.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's much more of a... It wants you to use your lethal powers. Like, that's... The entire game is built around that. Like, all of the gameplay mechanics. And you can get through via non-lethal means, but it's just not really that much fun to do it that way.
I wouldn't know. I didn't do it. I just murdered everybody.
I tried the stealth approach because I like doing that as well. And I guess I still was stealthy in murdering people, but I guess, I tried the non-lethal approach, and it just didn't really feel like it fit quite right.
Yeah, and I think I would have less of a problem with that if it didn't have a narrative that was kind of branched depending on how you play the game. So essentially it kind of rewards you for playing in certain ways, and if you want to get the reward for the non-lethal approach, it's really not... It's a real slog to get that. Whereas, if you're playing Metal Gear Solid and your attempts to be stealthy fail and your attempts to tranquilize people fail, you can always pull out your AK-47 and just mow people down. And there's really no consequence to that, except that, the game rates you poorly for that.
Wait, so is your problem with the consequences for...
Yeah.
For the high chaos game approach, or is your problem with the lack of excitement in the non-lethal approach? I'm confused.
So it's both the fact that it's not very exciting or fun to play the non-lethal route in Dishonored, and also the fact that if you don't play, it's locking off that ending. There are narrative consequences if you choose to go lethal or non-lethal.
Right.
And one of those paths is much more boring than the other one. But it also might be the path that a lot of people want to see. So
it's also, unfortunately, the canon path.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
The second one assumes that Corvo did everything non-lethally.
That's insane, because I guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of people who played that game murdered the crap out of everyone. Because the gameplay is just designed for that. It is designed to be the most fun way to play that game.
That's true.
So it kind of...
I won't disagree with you on that.
It kind of boggles my mind that's the ending they went with, since that's not the ending that many people experienced.
They wanted Emily... I don't know. I mean, just assuming, since Emily and Corvo are your playable characters in the second game, they wanted them to still be the protagonists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is too bad that they... I don't know. Because I feel like I don't know. I haven't played the second one, but like, why can't they kind of be anti-heroes in a way, you know? And you can play them that way in the second one, and probably, as far as I know, and that's great. But it's just kind of a bummer that they start you off with that canon ending. I don't know.
Well, okay.
Also, the endings suck anyway because the acting in this game is terrible and the writing is terrible.
The voice acting, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the voice acting's not completely awful, but the script that they're using, working with, is really
I was gonna
awful.
say it's got a pretty big name cast for voice actors.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about this the story, Jeremy?
Oh, Dishonored?
Yeah, the story and script, I guess.
Well, I think it certainly could have been better. It felt like it was secondary to what they were really going for, which was the gameplay, which I agree with Jack. I think the chaotic playthrough is just more natural and more fun for this setting, this game in particular. Like, it felt kind of, I don't know, there were parts of it that I thought were really good, but there were other parts that were just pretty, I don't know if cliche is the right word, but kind of mundane, expected. You could,
Yeah.
you felt like you could do it better yourself at times, and you've had no training. Yeah. And I don't know, like, if it was meant to be that way, because, I mean, the art style's a little bit wonky, so maybe they just wanted the whole thing to be a little bit wonky. I like the art style, personally.
The art style's the best part of the whole
Yeah, no, it's
package.
really cool. And I like I like the story in general. I think it's neat.
Can Daniel, can you give us a brief synopsis of what the story is? Like,
Sure.
what is Dishonored about?
Thank you for saving me, Jack, because I was going to struggle with that.
It's okay.
Just a reminder for all the listeners that we are not shy about spoiling every game that we talk about on Best Games Period. So I'm going to spoil Dishonored for you now. So Dishonored starts out, you're playing as Corvo. And Corvo is... Ow!
In pain.
Jesus. My daughter stuck a Supergirl sticker on my back tonight because I apparently had a boo-boo and needed a Band-Aid. And so I just remembered that it was there and just peeled it off my back and it hurt. Sorry. All right.
The story
Start
behind
that
that pain was pretty great.
Now you have a boo-boo. Now you need a real Band-Aid.
Yeah, right? All right, so you play as Corvo, and Corvo was the Empress's bodyguard. I said was. He is the Empress's bodyguard. He had to go away on a secret mission. I don't know that we ever really found out what that mission was.
No, I think he was basically sent to the other city-states to see if they had ways of curing their plague.
That's what it was. Yeah,
well,
thank you.
Plus, it was like wasn't it some sort of diplomatic mission because one of the other city-states were threatening to cut them off?
Yeah, it was
like,
something
from
like
all
that.
The trade and everything. Like, this is, like when boats where you're...
Wow, you guys delved into the lore a little bit more than I did.
So basically, well, because I just replayed like the first 2 hours of Dishonored.
Okay.
So basically, the Empress sent Corvo out to the other city-states to see if they had a cure or could provide some kind of help. And they all just said, nah, we're going to see what it does to you. And we're also going to blockade you so that you don't spread the plague.
Yeah. So Dunwall was not in good shape.
Which is pretty reasonable, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean...
And so...
it is a plague.
He comes back, and I find it kind of funny that the assassins decided to wait until her bodyguard was back to murder her. But I guess the reason they did that was because they had to frame him for the murder.
Right.
Frame him like a portrait being painted at the beginning of the game.
That's right. That happened too. And you play hide and seek with Emily, who may or may not be Corvo's daughter. Pretty sure. They confirmed that, yeah, she's his daughter, basically. So Corvo and the Empress were getting it on.
The Empress was a temptress.
The Empress was killed, and Emily was abducted. So you basically go in search of Emily and trying to find her, and you interrogate and assassinate whoever you need to get to her. And there's a bunch of people that are helping Corvo to find Emily. And when finally Corvo finds Emily, the people helping him kind of turn against him, basically, right?
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what the conspiracy was and why they were.
Yeah, the rebels.
He finds out that they were the ones behind the whole setup anyway, right?
Well, no, I don't think so. Like, the people behind the setup were like the higher up government officials that were, like the Empress was the Empress, but these are the people that actually did the governing. I forget what their actual roles were, titles were. Right. And the resistance group, like, after he did all their bidding for him and helped them, they're just kind of like, yeah, we're not really sure if we trust you anyway, and just kind of shunned him.
Okay.
And,
I thought one of them was, like, the main guy behind the whole thing.
I don't, maybe? I don't know. I don't really think so.
Yeah, okay. I believe you. And then he murders all of them and saves Emily again, and Emily either turns bad or good. But either way, she's the Empress. So from that point on, either Dunwall is saved or Dunwall just goes deeper and deeper into the darkness.
It's a whale of a story.
It is a whale of a tale.
And part of how Corvo kind of contributes to the good or bad ending is the body count he racks up on each of his missions. The plague rats that are kind of infesting the city feed off of the dead bodies that he makes. So the more dead bodies there are, the worse the plague gets. The less
Which is a
there
really
are.
cool concept.
Yeah, like, I get that. I think that's neat.
Yeah, it seems like reasonable.
The story also has little twists and turns in it depending on how you tackle each individual mission, because usually there's a secondary objective, or you can complete your mission a slightly different, harder way, usually, by going out of your way to protect someone or kill someone in a certain way that frames someone else. There are interesting things in the mission structure that kind of shake things up. And then probably the biggest thing that we haven't talked about yet is the Outsider. The Outsider plays a big role in the story of Dishonored. What is the Outsider?
What is his role beyond giving Corvo powers?
It's kind of implied that he's like some sort of weird god figure. That has some agenda specific to himself. I'm not exactly sure what it is, and I think part of it is that I remember in the lead up to release, so I'm not sure if this is still true, but I remember reading that basically they were trying to paint him as a neutral entity that isn't good or evil, but is just morally gray and exists out in the cosmos, and so not really sure how that not really sure what his game is.
He sort of reminds me of the G-Man from Half-Life.
He gives him some abilities and a heart.
he does. Yeah. He does. That is one of my favorite things, just on a conceptual level, because the game obviously doesn't ever explore that. But one day you just wake up after having a nightmare and you have you have superpowers, and B, you just have a heart, a mechanical heart that whispers to you.
It's not mechanical.
It's mechanically altered.
It is the Empress's. It is. It is the Empress's heart.
No.
And she talks to him through it.
It's not the Empress's heart. Is it?
I don't.
Pretty sure it is.
I don't know about that.
I'm gonna stay a little bit good and a little bit evil on this one. I don't know. I'm neutral.
Yeah,
I just remember.
I don't know.
It does speak with a woman's voice, but I'm pretty sure it's like just like some sort of artifact. I don't think.
Oh
It's...
no,
Yeah.
it's the Empress's voice.
It is.
It's the Empress. God, trust me.
But
the
it is
Empress.
mechanical though. I just
All
looked
right,
up a
maybe it's not
screenshot.
her
It does
heart,
have
but it's
mechanical
her
stuff
voice.
on it.
It is her voice. And in the sequel, they explore that further. From what I hear, she has a real character through the heart. And there's like, the Empress is a character
No, I don't
through
know.
her
I don't know how I feel
speakings.
about that.
via the heart. Yes. I don't know. It's weird. Dishonored's weird. That's one thing. It's a very weird game.
It is a
Good.
weird game.
In
Like,
a good way.
You know how Corvo is marked, as the Empress's murderer, and everybody would know him.
Yeah.
And like somehow wearing that weird mask will make you less noticeable.
Yeah. Yeah, the very clear skull mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy that everything in their society runs off of whale blubber.
Yeah.
Like that is the thing they use to power their city. And I just think that's a really it's like a weird steampunk concept that they use to great effect. Like they have really cool little walking machines and electric fences.
Yeah, they do some pretty amazing stuff with whale blubber.
And it's just the visual. You guys talked a little bit about the visuals, but I wasn't super impressed with the actual graphical element of Dishonored.
No.
Even when it came out, I thought it was kind of didn't really look great. But what looks great about Dishonored is its art style, which is kind of like it reminds me a lot of the Fable series.
Yeah, that's a good. I was trying to think of something to compare it to.
Yeah, like characters are kind of cartoonishly exaggerated, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like if you just stuck Thief into a modern Fable game, that's what you would get with Dishonored, except then you shove in all of the weird stuff. And I have a feeling that like the story isn't super interesting to me. Like I don't care about the conspiracy. I don't care. Like I don't even really like the layout of their lair. I think it's kind of meh. But the cool parts of Dishonored are all centered around the weird concepts that they came up with. Like the giant whales that they use to power their society. That's a really unique, weird concept, and I feel like they kind of designed the game more around that than any kind of story, and then they just kind of came up with something after the fact. I might not be giving them enough credit.
I mean, no, I think it's a really well conceptualized world all around. Just the art style, and I think they thought a lot about like what the history of this world is, and
I agree that they thought a lot about the history of the world and all that stuff, but I don't think they thought a lot about the story before they, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah,
there's a ton of world building. But world building isn't the same as a story.
Right. Very true. I think this game's one of the things that I will say about it is that it does world building incredibly well, but it does storytelling pretty poorly. Viktor Antonov is the name of the main art director, who kind of came up with a lot of the architectural stylings. And he was also the art director on Half-Life 2, which you can see the similarities in those two games between City 17 and Dunwall.
They're both very dystopian.
Yeah, but just like the architecture, too. I don't...
It's been a while since I
can
played
see
Half-Life 2, so...
I'm just telling you, you can see it, Jack.
All right.
Right?
I'll take your word for it. You're a sick man.
Your Half-Life hatred is really a problem. I wanted to ask you guys a question.
Yes,
so the
Half-Life
story,
2 is boring.
The linear plot in Dishonored isn't really spectacular. Can we agree about that?
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all of the emergent storytelling is some of the best in the industry, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I think the things that you can do, the things that like just randomly happen in that game, that depending on how you're playing it and the freedom you have to approach every challenge in different ways, I think really creates some great emergent moments.
Can you give
I don't know
an example?
If it's exactly the same thing, but it felt really Bioshocky to me at times. About how you could just go. There were things in the corners and on the walls and whatnot. If you really paid attention to the environment, you could get a better sense of the world from that than really the main storyline. And just being able to, it is a stealth game, so there's multiple ways to get to things. But there wasn't really a set way you had. I mean, a set like level progression. You could explore and the world would come back around to where you need it to be eventually, so you could just keep going and get there.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, like, to clarify for anybody listening who maybe doesn't know what emergent gameplay is and emergent storytelling, like, emergent is like in Skyrim when, something random happens and it just leads to an awesome thing. It's those moments that like you want to hit the share button on your controller and immediately put it on YouTube or Twitter or whatever. Stuff like that happens in Dishonored all the time, where you're approaching a few guards to try and take them out silently, and something random happens that you're not expecting, and you use your powers to escape that random encounter in a way that you maybe didn't even think you could do, but then, maybe you possess a guy and before his buddy shoots you, you walk that guy in front of the bullets and then he dies and his buddy just shot his buddy. And then, so just something weird and random. Like, go on YouTube and watch some people who are just amazing at Dishonored, and you will see the breadth of options in the gameplay is unbelievable. So, to me, yeah, it's definitely one of those kind of games. Do you not agree, Jack?
I
sounded
don't.
like you didn't.
Yeah, I don't. I think it gives you a lot of tools.
Yeah.
But I think it wants to be two things. It wants to be an action game and it wants to be a stealth game. And while I think it's a pretty good action game, I don't think it's a really good stealth game. We did Mark of the Ninja on this show, right?
Yeah.
Better
stealth game.
Mark of the Ninja very clearly tells you like where enemies are looking. And so part of the problem I guess, what am I trying to say? Where you're seeing emergent gameplay, I'm seeing a game that doesn't like it's not clearly communicating with the player, and it makes for a sloppy stealth game, which leads to those moments where you have to improvise, which are fun moments unless you're playing the non-lethal route, in which case everything is terrible. So if you're trying to play it as a stealth game, which is more of what the non-lethal route is, which I guess you could take as the canonical way to play the game, it's not nearly as fun, and there aren't any good ways of cleaning up your mess if you get spotted like that. So I guess my personal experience with the game, trying to play it non-lethally, is that those emergent moments weren't that great for me. It was like being sneaky through 80% of a mission and then finally getting spotted by accident, with no tools to actually fix that, just led to me running and hiding in a hole for like 15 minutes until people stopped looking.
Yeah, I actually kind of recall that being an issue too. I would get through an area pretty well stealthily, and then something would just blow the whole thing, and I didn't know how to recover very well, so I just started killing everybody.
Which it would be fine if the game wasn't trying to push you down one path or the other. But it is. And it equips you with a whole set of tools to deal with one of those paths and next to nothing to deal with the other one. Which I think is a pretty glaring either flaw or oversight. But it's something that definitely took away from my experience with the game. Because I've had experiences like what you're talking about with emergent gameplay, and I think a really great example of that was with Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. That an open world stealth game where, yeah, you could try and go through very stealthily, and the game even gives you the option to, not the option, but if you get spotted, you have like about 1 or 2 seconds of slow motion, like the world just goes into slow motion where you can try and fix your mistake before the alarm gets rung. And then once that alarm goes off, then you either need to escape or you need to just kill everything that's coming after you, and it leads to some really great moments, like you were saying. But one of the important things is that either way, the game doesn't judge you except on a mission score, which doesn't affect the actual story of the game. So,
yeah, I mean, you're right. I think you're definitely right. So, I guess my question is moot then. At this point, my question was going to be, like, how much do we value that freedom of gameplay and that emergent gameplay over, like, strict, well-done storytelling?
I think it can be different for any given game, but a game that's trying to do both, I'm not sure.
Like with games like Far Cry and Skyrim, there's a very clear intention to include that element of emergent narrative. Like that's the whole point of having kind of unpredictable AI out in an open world. But I'm not so sure that that's the case with Dishonored. Like I'm not convinced that was their intention, unless they said so in an interview or something, and I'm missing that.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just assume with all the freedom and options and ways that you can approach every scenario, I don't know. And maybe I've just watched more YouTube videos of, like, people who really know what they're doing, and just, like, I don't know, just crazy awesome stuff happens in that game.
We can disagree on stuff, that's fine.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
Fine.
We
wrong.
can, and I do.
Just like you're wrong about Half-Life.
All right. But I mean, I think the most important takeaway from this discussion,
if there was
Jack,
a notification up at the
Dishonored
front that was just like, "Hey, don't play this game non-lethally," then sure, I'm fine with that. But that's not there. Like that, they tried. It's a game where I think they just tried to do a little bit too much and didn't have either the time or scope. Let me restart that. I think it might be a case of where the game designers tried to do too much in too little time. Because I think they got the main body of the game working pretty well. It's just this one area that is also happens to be a core component of the game that feels like they kind of glossed over it.
Well, and maybe if you really dedicate yourself and put yourself into it, you could get as good as those YouTube videos. But for me personally, I just wasn't as invested into this game as I have been other games where I've taken that approach. So it just, at one point I just kind of wanted to get through it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't like the game, but I just didn't feel the real need to go after that completely.
Yeah, at a certain point, I mean, I felt the same way. At a certain point, I just wanted
what point was that?
Be done with it. That's a problem. I think
when you get in the boat with Samuel right outside of the prison. Oh wait,
the part right after the beginning of the game.
I think it was with the sewers. No, then not the sewers.
Okay.
The part with like the zombies and stuff. It was late in the game.
Yeah.
But I did not like that
it's
part.
It's the kind of game that overstayed its welcome a little bit. Like, was it a little bit too long? Would it have benefited from being a little bit shorter and less wrapped up in its own lore?
I think
there was a lot of fluff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's possible.
Because, I mean...
Which I rarely say.
I mean, 2012 was kind of the year where games in general have fallen into bigger is always better. And so... I think for a lot of games, padding out their runtime has become an unfortunate trend.
Yeah, I think it's a game that would have benefited from being a little more linear at times and a little more streamlined in places. I think it would have kept the players, at least my attention, longer and more concerned about not having the chaos playthrough.
Yeah, and also... why is Corvo a character in Dishonored 2? Because I never considered him really a memorable character from Dishonored. No. He's a silent protagonist.
I was going to say, Jack.
But there's no reason for him to be a silent protagonist?
I mean, it's all about your choices and the way that you want to approach everything. So they wanted the player to feel like it was them, not necessarily Corvo. So very much Corvo is just that kind of vehicle for you to be in the game. Which that kind of approach, I will give you credit on this, Jack. That kind of approach has kind of faded from. It has become less vogue lately. It's definitely not something that people do as often. I just played Titanfall 2, and the character in that talks. And, there's some witty banter between him and BT, the robot. And it benefits from that. So,
well,
I don't know.
Also, Dishonored is a very narrative-heavy game. It's very wrapped up in its world. The narrative, for all its flaws, is a main focus of the game. And it just seems really weird to have a main protagonist that is playing a pivotal role in all of that doesn't have any opinion about what's going on. I would love to hear what Corvo's reaction is to having a dream about a demon and giving him magic powers. I would love to hear some kind of dialogue back and forth between him and this demon. I would love to hear more about what he thinks about this conspiracy, because, again, we're coming into this world as outsiders, but our character isn't an outsider. Our character has lived in this universe for 30-odd years or something.
Well, maybe in Dishonored 2 you get to
hear
what he
thinks. But we're not talking about Dishonored 2.
I know.
Which is what it's weird to me seeing that Corvo is a main character in Dishonored 2, considering that he didn't have a character in the first Dishonored.
Yeah.
Or if he did, his character was basically just, I don't want to die in a prison cell. I guess I'll just take whatever comes my way. I don't know.
I mean,
there
I'm
are
not
other
going to
things,
get into
there are
the
other things you
debates
can infer, but
of Silent. Right. There's a lot of stuff that you can infer about him with his interactions with Emily and the Empress,
right,
and everybody else's kind of the way everybody else reacts to his presence.
But that's just not an interesting way to tell a story. Like,
no,
it's there. You can look for it, but in a game that is heavily about a story, to have a silent protagonist like this just doesn't really do much for me.
I hear you.
Yeah. This might be kind of a weird question. How do we feel about Arkane? The studio that developed this game?
I don't know. I mean, I only really have this to base this on, but I think they're pretty talented. I think they have good ideas, and they're trying new things, and I don't know. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with their games, I don't think. I'm trying to look at them now to see.
The other game that they made before Dishonored was Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, right?
They did some work on BioShock too, I guess. But they weren't by any means the chief developer. One thing interesting I'm seeing, Daniel, is they had a canceled game called Half-Life 2 Episode 4 Return to Ravenholm.
Yep, they did.
So I guess I don't have a real opinion on Arkane Studios. I haven't played enough of their games to really formulate an opinion.
I mean, Harvey Smith is kind of a...
Yeah, isn't he the Deus Ex guy?
Yeah, he's sort of a legendary designer.
Yeah, I mean, people hold Arkane in really high regard, I think. And I've never played it.
You don't get it.
I get it to an extent. I think they're a good developer, maybe even a great developer, but I haven't seen anything that lives up to the potential that so many people seem to see in their work.
For what it's worth, a lot of people have a lot of great things to say about Dishonored 2 so far.
Yeah, I'm also seeing some not so great things. So maybe it might be another warm
Dishonored.
Well, it might be a warm sequel. But we're
Gotcha.
Here on this show, we only talk about hot sequels.
Gotcha.
Hot sequels.
I mean, I don't know. To me, it just looks. I'm not super interested in Dishonored 2, which is crazy because I really did love Dishonored when it came out. But Dishonored 2 looks like just more of Dishonored. And kind of in the same way that like Rise of the Tomb Raider was just more Tomb Raider. I was incredibly let down by Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider. I finished it a few weeks ago, and man, I just didn't like that game as much as I was hoping I would.
Really?
It was just more of the same, and Dishonored 2 kind of looks like it's going to be that.
So it's more like Dishonored 2 as in also, not Dishonored 2?
Yeah.
It's interesting because over on the Extra Life Community Hub, shout out, we just published a piece from a contributor about how Rise of the Tomb Raider kind of is the latest in a series of action games that's trying to both have a humanized main protagonist while also explaining away all of the carnage and bloodshed that they wreak.
Yeah.
And that it was kind of a few good steps to a better storytelling in that genre.
Really?
That's what they wrote.
I started reading that, and then I was just like, no. I just can't agree with the premise. It's just the storytelling in Rise of the Tomb Raider is just horrendous.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't played it, so...
it's awful.
Why do you say that? I mean, we're getting off on a
terrible.
tangent.
It's just... I mean, did you play the first one?
No, I have the first one. I just haven't had the time to play it.
I really like the first one. I discussed the first one on this show, actually. Like, that's how much I like it. And
have you played it?
But
or Jeremy?
No.
No? We should play it and then talk about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But the gameplay is the standout in that game. And the story is kind of terrible. Like, actively terrible. And
in the first Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in this one, the story is a tidge bit better, and they hint at some stuff, but, like, the only interesting character is Lara. She's only ever the interesting character in that game or the first game. And it's just super disappointing, because I wanted, like, I had just come off Uncharted 4 earlier this year, and the dialogue and characters in that game were so well developed, and then you go to Rise of the Tomb Raider, and it was just amateur.
So how do we feel about Dishonored? Are we ready to call it?
Yeah, so Dishonored. Anyway, Dishonored's story is terrible too.
Okay.
Oh, shots fired.
I was kind of on the fence coming into this, but the more I talk about Dishonored, the more I'm like, it just wasn't quite where it should be to be a best games period. Like, it's a really good game. I like it a lot. I respect all the things they do with the systems in that game and how fun it can be. But there are a lot of ways, not only in the gameplay, not only in the story, but also in the gameplay, that are just problems that nag at me when I think about that game.
Okay. So. I feel like we probably discussed most of those things already.
Yep,
yeah, I don't approach Dishonored nearly as favorably as you do, Daniel.
Yeah.
I recognize it as a good game, and I've definitely had fun with it. But it's also one of those games that the more I think about it, the less I like it. So, like, at first when we were talking about doing Dishonored, like 3 weeks ago now, I was like, okay, yeah, it's a pretty good game. I could go either way on it. And then as I've had time to think about it, and as I went back and replayed it, I just kind of... It's good sometimes. It's okay at other times. There are a few times it manages to be genuinely great. And I think it's definitely worth a play if you're into the game. If you're into games like Thief, I'm sorry if you're into games like that, because there's certainly not been enough games to cater to people like you.
Been a bunch this year though.
There have
Deus Ex.
There have been, well,
Dishonored and Hitman.
I wouldn't say Deus Ex really appeals to that Thief crowd anymore. I think it's turned into more of an RPG, which is fine. It's its own thing. I think it's still interesting, but it's not Thief, and Dishonored is definitely more in line with Thief, except not nearly as great of a stealth game. But if it's what you have, then you're gonna play it, I guess. And I think, honestly, that's part of why people like Dishonored so much, is because it came out during a time when there weren't a ton of really great stealth games. And this was a pretty great stealth game. Correction, this was a pretty great game that had stealth elements to it that people could compare to Thief in a favorable way. And I think that ended up getting it a lot of accolades combined with its unique setting.
So you could be stealthy and be lethal, though, Jack. Did you?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, you could.
Would you say it's a good stealthy game if you go the lethal route?
No, I think those are two separate problems.
Oh, man, I disagree.
I don't think that it communicates enough information to the player to be a good stealth game to allow you to plan out stealthy strategies.
All right.
To me, a good stealth game is one that you could play and just not kill anyone. In Dishonored,
I don't think that's a requirement, but
I mean, I don't think it should be a requirement either. But I'm just saying, like, in a great stealth game, you should be able to plan out your moves so you can sneak into a location and sneak out without anyone knowing you were there. That's almost impossible in Dishonored. You could do it, I suppose, but there are so
it would
many.
take some trial and error and dedication. A lot.
Yeah,
it takes some real skill. Yeah,
or not even skill, just like
trial and error.
Just trial and error and memorizing things. Yeah. And there are games that can convey information to you effectively so that you don't have to spend 50 hours figuring out patrol routes to do that. And again, perfect example is Mark of the Ninja. Mark of the Ninja conveys all the information you need to know without it clearly conveys that information. Dishonored does not.
Yeah.
You don't know how far NPCs in Dishonored can look. You don't know if you're really covered because even when you're crouched, you're at kind of an awkward elevation that makes it hard to determine if you're actually concealed or not.
There's like a shadow effect.
But I'm just talking like visually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even if you're crouched behind a barrier, your head is very clearly up above it. It just doesn't feel like you're hidden all that well.
But okay. But I mean, it does tell you. There's like there's like a framing shadow around the screen when you're hidden, and
yeah, we're talking about two different things.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like for example, I was playing it the other day. I was carrying a body, and I was just walking through a gate, and there was a guy probably about 10 yards away, was looking straight at me, couldn't see me. I was even under a spotlight. He couldn't see me. I'm crouching behind like a barrier like 3 minutes later, and there's someone even farther away. He spots me. Like there's no... There are just so many things that feel inconsistent when you're trying to sneak around in that game, which is fine if you can fix it by killing those people. But I think that once you get to that point, then you're designing more for an action game. And again, that's fine. I just think that makes it not as great of a stealth game. Which was a very rambling way of me to explain that. But hopefully listeners understand where I'm coming from.
So for you, it's a no?
Yeah, for me, it's a no. I think it's a good game that occasionally manages to be great.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
Wow, it's
too bad.
A unanimous no. Yeah, and again, for Dishonored fans, doesn't mean we hate the game, that it's terrible. It just doesn't quite...
It has a lot of imagination. It has a lot of imagination and vision behind it. And, I'll probably play Dishonored 2 at some point. Probably not in the immediate future, but I hope it's really good. I don't ever want a game to be bad.
Well, no. That would be a terrible thing to hope for. Alrighty. Well, I guess it's decided, huh?
Yeah, I guess it is.
I guess it's Dishonored.
Dishonored, haha. I love how, even though you guys both said no, you're still kind of disagreeing on everything. That's great.
Well, we're disagreeing on yeah. I don't know why I'm trying to explain it. People just listen to an hour of it.
I was going to say, people can hear it. They'll know.
It's okay. I mean, I just like to argue. I have
my moments.
My cousins and I got together, and my whole family and my cousins got together, and my cousins and I kind of had a argument with my mom before the election about why Bernie Sanders was better than Hillary Clinton. But we were all in agreement that we were going to vote for Hillary, but we had to argue about it anyway. So I just like to argue, so don't worry about it.
All right, we'll argue away.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. Jack's wrong.
Okay.
It's a great game, but it's just not a best games period.
All right. Well,
And Daniel's wrong. Half-Life 2 sucks.
Oh,
God.
We're going to just have to get that
Jack.
get that game out of our system one of these days.
Jack, can people still donate to Extra Life?
People can still donate to Extra Life. So, if you don't know what Extra Life is, every year, Children's Miracle Network Hospitals has an event through Extra Life to raise money for sick and injured kids in hospitals. This year, it was on November 5th, and people from all across the United States and Canada got together in various locations and played video games for 24, sometimes 25, sometimes longer hours straight to raise money for these kids. And you know what? You can still donate over on extra-life.org. You can find... you could even start your own team still. You could start a team, have your own event. It's very open and very grassroots. People can take it as far as they want with it. Wow, I can't talk. People can take this event and run with it as far as they want. So it's all up to you. Otherwise, you can head over to extra-life.org and you can make a donation to Extra Life generally, or you can find a team or person that is supporting a hospital that you care about and make a donation there. And if you want to get more involved with the community, you can head on over to community.extra-life.org, where you can find this very podcast, and you can also connect with various members of the Extra Life community across the United States and Canada via the local guilds. So, check it out, and hopefully help us to save some kids. And this year we are, I believe, right on the verge of raising $8.5 million, and all of that goes directly to kids.
All right.
Yeah, that just goes to show what a year-round event this has become, because the vast majority of that wasn't even raised on the main day, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like
I mean,
the big majority of it.
Yeah, I mean, the actual day of November 5th, I think we raised maybe around $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's
there
kind of
have been
why I thought it was a running total when I heard that. I was like, wow. But yeah.
We're actually, if we manage to raise $9.6 million this year, we will have hit $30 million for the lifetime total of Extra Life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
I'd also be shocked if somebody just listened to the show for an hour and didn't know what Extra Life was, but just in case.
I mean, just in case. It always helps.
Yeah, no.
You can check out this show every Monday on community.extra-life.org, as well as on GameInformer.com, as well as on Libsyn, our hosting site, and iTunes, and SoundCloud. We would love some reviews on iTunes. We have a few. Thank you to everybody who has reviewed us. But if we get some more, that'll make us a little bit more visible on the iTunes store, which it would be great. Then we could have more people listening. You can follow us on Twitter at BestGamesPeriod. You can also find our YouTube channel. Is it The Best Games Period on YouTube, Jack?
I believe it is.
And Jack just put up a playlist of all the songs that we've used at the end of every episode, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. If you want some background music for your enjoyment. What am I missing?
Nothing.
All right. Jack?
Daniel?
Jeremy?
Daniel? Jack?
Shit. All right. Thank you both for joining me tonight for episode 44 of The Best Games Period. And thank you, good listeners, for joining us as well. We'll be back next week, the week after Thanksgiving, with another show. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you all on the flippity dippity. Dippity. And Jack, you can actually cut this out. You never cut this stuff out of the show. Never.